Yes, welcome back to the show, and today we are speaking all about how Luke Beveridge has completely transformed this Bulldogs defense to the point where they might actually be competitive towards the end of the finals. And that is a big statement to say because we've seen them the last couple of years completely be let down by their defense. We saw it last year against top 8 teams. They could not defend anyone, and no one has ever questioned the Western Bulldogs' ability to score, the Western Bulldogs' ability to move the ball, the Western Bulldogs' ability to put pressure on the opposition. The issue has always been with them when the pressure comes back, when they start to lose stoppage, when they start to lose field position, can their defense stand up? And the answer so far for the last couple of years has been no. It has been categorically no, to the point where we are consistently saying that this is one of the best lists in the team. We are wasting talent. We are seeing a horrific coaching plan. All of these things have been said for years now, purely off the back of this team's inability to defend. Well, we're starting to see a little bit of a different story here this year. And that is off the back of some clear philosophical and system changes that we have seen from the coaching staff. And the credit has to go to the coaching staff because the players play in the structures that the coaches actually implement and ideate, which means we are going to give some credit to the players and a specific player in general. But realistically, the players are playing to what the coaches want them to do, and the system that they're built, and the system that they've trained, and the system that they've had instilled to them over the preseason. Now, we did hear preseason Luke Beveridge talk about the fact that they needed to change their defense, that they wanted to be more competitive with the top teams in the league, not just from a scoring standpoint, but actually from a pressure and defensive standpoint. And with all of that said, I want you to stick around and subscribe, and let's get into it. Now, the fascinating thing is there's a couple of different reasons why the Bulldogs are actually getting good at this. And the first way is actually the system and the structure that they're defending teams with. And I just want to have a look at this first, and then we'll explain it. And so I'm really only going to show you one example of their entire team defense, because realistically, the examples are too long for this, and I'm going to get copyrighted and all sorts of things like that. But what we'll see is we get a quick turnover here from the Bulldogs, and instantly we're going to see all of their players looking around saying, hey, are we folding back? Are we folding back? How far are we folding back this time? So as soon as Adelaide get this ball, look at all of these Western Bulldogs defenders just slowly shift inside their defensive half, and they never, ever mark a man, or I guess a soccer term is mark, or man up on a man inside their own forward 50. You will rarely see a Bulldogs player do that unless they're absolutely forced to, or they're trying to put pressure on a backwards kick and they end up just in there having to stand because of the new rules. But what you will see is they will allow these massive pockets of space, allowing the rest of their players to actually set up almost all of them inside the defensive half and really only leave maybe 5, 6, or 7 this side of the contest, who are also willing very quickly to get back inside their defensive half, and they will give up these sort of kicks for the entirety of the game, which means the opposition is in this weird mode of, well, we're controlling the football, but we're not really moving it, but they don't have the football, so we'll be winning. And the Bulldogs are just saying, you guys can move the football slow, you guys can move the football side to side. We're really just not going to man you up basically at all. Like you can have these kicks all the way around the side. We will give you absolutely everything uncontested that you could want, because it means that we're allowing our time to get our players inside the defensive 50. So even when Adelaide do get an overlap handball here and they go inside forward 50, well, look at the defensive structure here. They've got structure absolutely everywhere. Not only in the initial marking contest, where their defenders have genuinely good position, where they're not in one-on-one contests, where they're not getting out-bodied, where they're in genuine position to spoil, make a defensive act, or help each other out in this situation. So Buku Khamis 1v1 versus Riley Thilthorpe, you would think in a one-on-one situation he's probably going to lose that. But the fact that he's got James O'Donnell there, the fact that he's got Bailey Dale here to come third man, fourth man into this contest, it means that there's not really a need for Buku Khamis to win one-on-one. He's just got to occupy Riley Thilthorpe enough. But If Adelaide had moved the ball quicker, which the Bulldogs are not allowing them to do or not incentivizing them to do, well, then this does become a genuine one-on-one contest. But when the Bulldogs have been able to slow other teams down, it means that their opposition are never really going to one-on-one contests. So when this ball does come in, not only do they have good representation at the initial contest, they had 5 or 6 players on the outside of that contest. Rory Lobb standing 10 metres behind by himself. They had Marcus Bontempelli flooding into the defensive 50. They had players absolutely everywhere, to the point where anywhere that ball went inside the forward 50 for Adelaide, the Bulldogs had numbers everywhere because they flood back so quickly, so well. And so in that clip, we sort of see the Bulldogs be willing to give up uncontested marks inside their forward half, inside the opposition's defensive half, and we see that their defenders are in a position where they can actually defend in one-on-one situations because it's not actually ever a one-on-one contest. And that is a very, very, very vital point here that we've got to keep in our mind for the rest of the video. But we do see some players inside their defensive 50, inside their back 6, taking some serious strides. So let's have a look at that. Now, the next thing that we do have to speak about is actually the development of their key defenders. So we know that Rory Lobb at his best is a very, very high level intercept defender, but we didn't really know about Buku Khamis and we didn't really know about James O'Donnell. We needed to see that development. Well, now we're starting to see that development, not only in their skill set, but what Bevo is actually trusting them to do. So we're going to see a really good example of that where Buku Khamis, and we're going to focus on Buku Khamis here because I think he's been the biggest riser, but he's also got, I think, the biggest license in this defensive 50. So Adelaide are going to win this contest. They're going to spread the ball out to the wing, but when we focus on Buku Khamis, we're going to focus on the license that Bevo has given him to the point where he's able to do things like this. So Adelaide go out to the wing here. Isaac Rankin kicks the ball to Darcy Fogarty. As soon as Darcy Fogarty gets this, and we end up at a wide angle shot here, when he's kicking the football off screen right now, Buku Khamis' man is trying to lengthen the field by going back to the goal square. But he decides, I'm gonna stay up. I don't think Darcy Fogarty, 1, is going to be able to kick 80 metres over my head, but 2, if this ball does get over the top, or if there is a contest at ground level, I'm going to back us in. I'm going to get numbers to this contest to back us in that we're going to win the ground level contest. So he has this anticipation, but he also clearly has a license to roll off his man basically whenever he pleases. So this ball does end up going over the back. Thilthorpe is left in no man's land and Buku gets an intercept possession. But it's not only it's not one time that we see that. And we'll focus on another piece of play here from Buku Khamis. So straight out of this stoppage, Adelaide get the clearance. And when Berry looks up, instantly, Buku has done this incredible anticipation. But it's important to note that this isn't going to work all of the time. So Buku Khamis has come off his man here and he's left him in 40 metres of space and with a clear leading lane to either side of his opponents here. But Buku has just anticipated, well, they're just not going to use him. Like, they're just not going to use him streaming out of contest. So how can I be an impact player? Well, I've got to back in my instincts. And that is the difference, I think, this year to last year with the specific players inside the defensive 50 for the Bulldogs, because now he has this incredible license to go third man up and actually intercept that contest and create a really good contest, get a stoppage inside the defensive 50, and everyone's happy about it. Now, it looks really, really good. If his man, for some reason, did get that lead-up mark, well, then it probably doesn't look so good. But what I'm commenting on is the license that the Bulldogs players have been given inside their defensive 50, mixed with the actual structure that they've now got down there. And so when we talk about players like Buku Khamis, players like James O'Donnell, it's pretty simple. They have been taught a system that works, and not only are they gaining confidence in that system, they're gaining confidence in themselves through just the natural development. Now, they've brought in new players, obviously, players like Michael Selwood, players like Connor Buderick, players like Lockie Jacks. These players have come into the team and been genuinely serious contributors. And Buku Khamis has become a mainstay in this team, which he probably hasn't been for the last couple of years. But what I'm trying to get at is the natural development has come at the absolute perfect time. Not only the natural development of Buku Khamis and his increased confidence and his increased license within the system, it's come at the time of the system completely changing, and it's actually confusing the entire league. But it's actually not that confusing. it's just confusing to the league because everything that we learn about football is kind of getting questioned and challenged. You see, when you play football growing up, the one thing that you always hear is, if I have the ball, I control the game. But that's not necessarily always the case, because Luke Beveridge has been willing to allow the opposition to control the football whilst he's actually the one controlling the game. And there's some statistics to back this up. So in 2025, when they were a middling defense and the defense cost them absolutely a finals berth and a potential premiership run, they were allowing 212 uncontested possessions a game. This year, 2026 so far, they're allowing 245 uncontested possessions a game and an increase of 33, as well as an extra 34 total marks. They are allowing the opposition to control the football whilst not actually controlling the game. So it's this weird sort of conundrum for opposition teams saying, we're controlling the football, but we're not being able to score. But if we're controlling the football, we've always been taught that that means we're controlling the game. So let's just keep playing into this, and eventually the damn wall will break, and eventually we will score. That is the mind conundrum that the opposition is in at the moment, or that Luke Beveridge is putting in them at the moment, because he's allowing teams to take control of the possession, to take control of the tempo, to take control of the game, whilst he actively allows his defense, allows his midfielders, his wingers, his half forwards to actually flood back inside the Bulldogs' defensive half. So even though the opposition is controlling the football and the tempo, they can't actually move it to any dangerous areas, and they can't actually dispose of the football in any sort of dangerous way. And we can see that. So last year, 2025, the opposition to the Western Bulldogs had a 0.92 threat rating. And when we talk about kick threat rating, we are talking about, is that kick or is that disposal, in this point it is a kick, but is that disposal going to lead to a score? In this stat last year, that meant that a lot of the kicks, they ranked top 5 in the league at allowing that, which meant that they were allowing a lot of threatening kicks. They weren't allowing a huge amount of disposals, but a lot of those disposals were threatening because their defense was never ever set, and their defense was consistently under pressure because they were so forward leaning, they were so aggressive, so attacking, that it meant every time that the opposition did turn the football over and got it in their hands, the Bulldogs' defensive structure was absolutely in all sorts, which meant basically every disposal was extremely threatening because there were holes absolutely everywhere. Now we compare that to this year, they're now at a minus 3.57 threat rating, which means if they continue this for the entire year, and if they had done that last year, they would have been by far first in the league at not allowing the opposition to take them on. Because 90% of the opposition's disposals at the moment are uncontested, kick mark in the back half, which are not threatening to the Bulldogs at all. So although it might seem like the opposition is taking control of the game, because technically they're in control of the football, none of their disposals are actually threatening the Bulldogs at all. And not only are they not threatening the Bulldogs, they're actively giving time for the Bulldogs midfielders and high half forwards to defend the ground better, to flood back inside their defensive 50, to allow their back 6 to establish good position, and to allow all of their players to flood the back half. So any time that any team that plays the Bulldogs at the moment tries to move the ball at all after they've given up 5 or 6 uncontested marks in the back half, well, the Bulldogs' defense is already set up, so the kick or the disposal is not ever actually threatening the Bulldogs. And we saw that with the vision before, where they were sort of just chip marking around. And what that results in is the fact that they are now lower in marks inside 50 than they were in 2025. Obviously, they are lower in shots per inside 50. And they are also allowing a 9% less scores from defensive half. So they're not allowing teams to actually score from their defensive half because they're flooding back so quickly, so efficiently, and the other team is not able to get the ball from their forward 50, the Bulldogs forward 50, to their own forward 50, the Bulldogs' defensive 50, because the system and the structure that Luke Beveridge has put in place is very, very good. And that is just the crux of it. It is just a very, very good system, not only just logistically and systematically, it is good mentally in the sense that, as I was saying before, you grow up, every footballer is ingrained with the fact and the idea that if you control the football, you control the game. Well, Bevo sort of flipped that on their head and go, well, they can control the football and think that they're controlling the game, so they won't really want to adjust. They won't really want to take risks and move away from the game style that they're playing because they're dominating in a lot of the stats. But we're actually controlling the game because we're setting up our defense, we're setting up our structure, we're setting up our shape behind the football, which isn't allowing them to score. And we heard Matthew Nicks talk about this in his press conference, saying we were too slow to adjust. We felt like the numbers were in our favor and we were just too slow to adjust. But it's hard to adjust not only in-game, but it's hard to adjust the player's mindset on the field when they resort to their natural beliefs about playing the game of football, which is all about control the football, control the game. And even if you can come in at halftime, come in at three-quarter time and say, guys, we need to take the game on. We need to throw out everything that we've learned in junior football about controlling the football, and we need to put the football in harm's way. That is a big ask, even if you go into the game knowing that you're probably going to have to do that. So even though when Adelaide did start to come back and they were trying to take risky kicks and they were trying to take more threatening kicks and trying to move the ball faster, although it did look good, there were still moments in that last quarter where they were almost reluctant to move the football. And I don't think that was a systems thing. I don't think that was a lack of adjustment. I think that was just them resorting to their natural beliefs about the game of football, which is control the football, control the game. But that is clearly changing. And I'll be so very clear about this. Bevo is not the first coach to do this in history. He's also not even the first coach to do this in the last couple of years, because Collingwood and Craig McRae have been quietly doing this for a very, very long time in a slightly different way. They do it by actually controlling the football. They don't necessarily allow the opposition to take a lot of uncontested marks inside their defensive half. They did against St Kilda in the first game of the year, but that's not a trend. That's not a rule in their system. They do it by, when they have the football over the last couple of years, they move the ball slowly, methodically, they chip around. And when they're chipping around the football and when they're moving the ball slowly and with purpose, that's actually giving time for their players to set up in a defensive press, so that even if they do turn the football over, all of their players are already set up in the defensive press, which doesn't allow the opposition team to score. And we've seen the Brisbane Lions do it a very similar way, in the sense that they move the ball so deliberately, but also very quickly, to the point where your defense is under pressure and it gives time for their defense to get set. You'll often see that when Harris Andrews kicks the ball to Dane Zorko, instantly, bang, like that. Harris Andrews doesn't care where this football is going. He's instantly calling back their defenders, calling back their wingers to say, hey, we know you want to get involved in the offensive transition. Dane Zorko is going to take this ball through the middle of the ground, and we're going to use our high half forwards and we're going to use our midfielders to do that. The rest of us, we get set now. We get set before we've turned the football over. And a lot of teams aren't doing that nowadays because they're so invested in defenders and wingers and halfbacks becoming so involved in the offense that if they do turn the football over, you're now relying on all of those players to be so switched on to switch like that from offense to defense and get back into system and get back into the structure. Well, the Bulldogs, what we've seen with Collingwood and what we see with Brisbane, are doing it slightly different, in the sense that they're actually actively setting up their defense before they ever turn the football over. And that is a fascinating point. But this only works if you do have a potent ability to score. Now, the Brisbane Lions obviously have a potent ability to score because they move the ball so quickly and so accurately and so efficiently, and they have star players. So they've basically got everything that you want on offense, so that even when they do turn the football over, they've got their defense set, like we said, but they don't need everybody in their team, in their 18 on the field, to be involved in scoring, to put pressure in the forward half, because they will back in their players to win outnumbered contests a lot of the time. Now, Collingwood have struggled with this because they've been so good defensively, but the one criticism has been, can they actually score? Well, when you're actively pulling players out of your offensive momentum, out of your offensive movement to put them in defensive structures and get them ready for a potential turnover like Collingwood are doing, well, then you're relying on players to be either really, really good at moving the football, being really, really efficient at moving the football, or winning outnumbered contests. And we've seen the Brisbane Lions be able to do that, but Collingwood haven't been able to do that on a consistent basis, which is why they've struggled to score over 100 a lot of the time. Now, the Bulldogs don't have that issue because their midfield is so potent, is so high scoring, is so high powered, and their forward line is genuinely insane that they don't have to worry. They don't have the same worries that Collingwood has. When you just compare the two forward lines, they don't have the same worries in the sense that their forward line is utterly potent and Collingwood's isn't. So they don't have that same issue. They're more in the Brisbane Lions category where they can sacrifice a few of their players being involved in the offensive transition to set up their defensive transition because their offensive firepower is so good that they don't need all 18 on the field actively contributing to it all of the time. And that is the stark difference here. So we've got three teams defending very similar, or at least having very philosophically similar defensive profiles with three slightly different outcomes. The Bulldogs are obviously very new to this and they're going to have their struggles and teams are going to combat what they're trying to do. The Brisbane Lions have been doing this for years now, and it's obviously been very successful. And Collingwood have also been doing this for years now, and it has been very successful, but we're starting to see the tail end of it, or at least it seems like we're starting to see the tail end of it, because they're struggling to win contests inside their forward half, and they're struggling to move the ball with any sort of efficiency. And that is the big issue here. But the Bulldogs have figured out a system, or at least they've seen a system that they think works for them, and so far, it absolutely has worked for them. And that's what we speak about today. So if you like these sort of videos, please feel free to stick around and subscribe. We have so many videos in the catalog that you can go back and watch, breaking down vision, breaking down specific games, breaking down specific players. But also, we've got so many videos planned ahead. I mean, I've got this entire whiteboard here of all of these videos that I want to do that are all different about different styles of football and different styles of the game, but also not just football, also wider sport in general, commentary on the entire system that our great game sits in, from the media to the broadcasters to streaming to everything. I mean, we talk about everything on this channel, so please feel free to stick around and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.